The snowblower roared at 7:04 a.m., and by 7:06, Garrett Voss had made the single most expensive mistake of his homeowners association presidency. He just didn't know it yet, because the man he'd just fined, the man whose driveway sat at the exact legal boundary of the only road connecting Pinecrest Hollow to the outside world, wasn't just angry. He was a land surveyor, and he'd been waiting 11 years for someone to push him this far. Desmond Alcott had lived at the end of Breckenridge Lane for 11 years, 3 months, and as of that Tuesday morning in February, exactly 14 days. He knew this because he'd moved in on a Tuesday, unpacked alone, and marked the date in the leather journal his late father had given him with the inscription, "Keep records of everything. The world rewards precision." He kept records of everything. The snowblower was a Toro Power Max 826 OAE, 45 pounds of brushed aluminum and roaring engine, capable of throwing snow 22 feet in any direction. Desmond had purchased it 4 years ago after his first winter shoveling the 200-foot driveway by hand had left him with a lower back injury that cost him 6 weeks of field work. He was a licensed land surveyor with a small but respected firm, Alcott Boundary Solutions, and his livelihood depended on being able to stand upright in frozen fields for 12 hours at a time. The machine wasn't a luxury. It was a medical necessity disguised as equipment. He'd used it every winter since without incident, until Garrett Voss became HOA president. Garrett had moved into Pinecrest Hollow 3 years ago, into the largest house on the development, a 5-bedroom colonial with white columns that he'd painted an off-white that he called antique ivory, and everyone else called the same white. He was 44, had made money in insurance sales, and carried himself with the particular confidence of a man who had never been genuinely challenged. He had a firm handshake, a ready smile, and a talent for reading HOA bylaws the way a prosecutor reads criminal statutes, always looking for the clause that let him do what he already intended to do. The noise ordinance was Section 4, Paragraph C of the Pinecrest Hollow HOA covenants. No mechanical equipment producing sound in excess of 65 decibels shall be operated on any residential property between the hours of 7:00 p.m. and 8:00 a.m. Garrett's house was 4 properties away, and he'd heard it through double-pane windows and a sound machine running on medium. He'd checked his phone, verified the time, put on his robe, and by 7:09 he was standing on his porch with a coffee mug and a self-satisfied expression that his wife, Renata, recognized and quietly dreaded. By 7:30, a violation notice had been photographed, printed, and slid beneath Desmond's front door. $250 fine. Citation number 2024, FEB 003. Desmond found it when he came in from finishing the driveway. He stood in his entryway, snow still melting off his boots, and read it twice. Then he set it on the kitchen counter, placed a smooth river stone on top of it. He kept a bowl of them by the door, a habit from his father, and went to make coffee. He did not feel rage. What he felt was something older and quieter than rage. It was recognition. The recognition of a man who had spent his career reading the precise language of legal documents, property lines, and recorded plats, and who had just realized that the person trying to fine him had made the mistake of drawing his attention to a boundary. He called his office manager, a woman named Priscilla Dant, at 8:15. "Pull the recorded plat for Pinecrest Hollow," he said. "The original subdivision filing, not the HOA documents, the county recorder's plat." "For what purpose?" Priscilla asked. She was methodical, and she preferred to log the reason for every record pull. "Personal research," he said. "I'll explain later." The plat arrived in his email by 9:00 a.m. He opened it on his large monitor, zoomed to the section he was already thinking about, and spent 40 minutes with a magnifying glass and a ruler confirming what his memory, trained over decades of survey work, had been quietly suggesting since the moment he read the violation notice. He poured a second cup of coffee and sat back. Breckenridge Lane, the single road that connected all 37 homes in Pinecrest Hollow to County Route 9, and through it to the town of Havermill, the grocery store, the school, the hospital, and every other necessity of modern life, did not belong to the HOA. It did not belong to the county. According to the original 1987 subdivision plat, filed with Clearwater County and recorded at Book 44, page 112, Breckenridge Lane was a private easement road, and the underlying fee interest, the actual ownership of the land beneath that road, belonged to Lot 1 of the original Pinecrest Hollow subdivision. Lot 1 was Desmond Alcott's property. He had bought it from the original developer's estate in 2013, along with everything recorded against it and appurtenant to it. His title insurance policy and closing documents were in the fireproof cabinet in his home office. He retrieved them now, opened the relevant pages, and confirmed it with the same neutral precision he brought to every boundary dispute he'd ever been paid to resolve. The road was his. Not metaphorically, not in some disputed legal gray area. The fee-simple title to the strip of land comprising Breckenridge Lane, 42 feet wide, 712 feet long, had been conveyed to him as part of Lot 1, subject only to a recorded access easement for the benefit of the other lots in the subdivision. He read the easement language carefully. He read it 3 times. The easement granted the other lot owners the right to use Breckenridge Lane for residential ingress and egress. It did not grant them the right to maintain the road. It did not grant the HOA any authority over the road. It did not include any language about the underlying owner's rights to restrict, encumber, or control access, except that such access could not be permanently terminated without a court order. Temporarily restricted for legitimate reasons. The easement was silent. Desmond got up, walked to his window, and looked out at Breckenridge Lane. It was February. The road had 9 inches of fresh snow on it, which the HOA's contracted plowing service, a company called Ridgecrest Property Services, had not yet cleared. He could see tire tracks from 2 residents who'd already left for work, packed snow compressing into ice in the ruts. He watched a Subaru from the Finneran house at Lot 12 slide slightly on the turn, overcorrect, and recover. He noted the time, 10:22 a.m. He called his attorney, a woman named Claudette Bray, who had handled 2 of his boundary dispute cases and who answered on the second ring. "I need to know something specific," Desmond said. "If I own the fee interest in a private easement road, and the easement language is silent on temporary closures for legitimate property maintenance purposes, what are my options?" There was a pause. He could hear Claudette pulling up something on her computer. "What's the context?" she asked. He explained. He was precise and brief. He mentioned the violation notice, the HOA, the Snowblower ordinance, and the plat. He did not embellish. When he finished, Claudette was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Desmond, did you know about this when you bought the property?" "Not specifically," he said. "I knew I was buying Lot 1 of the original plat. I knew the road was part of it. I hadn't fully considered what that meant until this morning." "What prompted you to look?" "Someone fined me $250 for using a snowblower at 7:04 a.m. Another pause. When Claudette spoke again, her voice carried the careful neutrality of an attorney who had just spotted something significant. "The easement language you described, and I'd want to review the actual document, suggests that you have broad retained rights as the underlying fee owner. The easement holders have the right to pass and repass. You have everything else, including the right to make reasonable decisions about the road's condition, provided you don't permanently block access. What constitutes a legitimate temporary closure? Road maintenance, safety hazards, construction, survey work." She paused. If you were, say, conducting a formal boundary survey of the road corridor, which, as a licensed surveyor, you have the professional standing to initiate that could justify setting stakes, establishing equipment, and temporarily restricting vehicle access while work was underway. Desmond looked out the window again. The Subaru's tracks had frozen into ridges. How temporary is temporary? Long enough to do the work properly, Claudette said. I wouldn't push it past 72 hours without paperwork. But with proper notice posted, 24 hours in advance would be generous. You'd be on solid legal ground. What kind of notice? Written notice to each lot owner, posted at the road entrance, certified mail to the HOA president. Desmond was quiet for a moment, watching the snow. Draft the notice, he said. I'll review it this afternoon. He hung up and sat down at his desk. He opened his journal, the one with his father's inscription, and began writing. He did not write about anger. He wrote about property lines and recorded instruments and the precise, patient weight of documented truth. He wrote about the difference between a man who reacts and a man who responds. He wrote about the fact that Garrett Voss had issued citation 2024 FEB 003, and that Desmond intended to contest it, and that in preparing his contest, he had discovered something that changed the nature of their relationship entirely. He capped his pen and looked at the citation, still sitting under the river stone. $250. 11 years of being a quiet, careful, unobtrusive neighbor. 11 years of shoveling his walks, maintaining his property, keeping to himself, and never asking for anything. 11 years of watching the HOA grow progressively more aggressive under a series of presidents who treated the covenants as tools of personal authority rather than community standards. And now this. A fine for clearing snow from his own driveway 4 minutes after the allowed time. Desmond picked up the river stone and set it carefully back in the bowl by the door. Then he picked up the citation and filed it in a folder labeled Pinecrest Hollow HOA Active Dispute. He labeled a second folder Breckenridge Lane Fee Interest Documentation, and a third Survey Lot 1 Road Corridor. He worked methodically through the afternoon, pulling every document he needed. The original plat, his deed, his title policy, the HOA covenants, the recorded easement. He compared the easement language against 3 cases Claudette sent him by 3:00 p.m. He drafted a formal letter contesting the fine, citing the 7:04 start time, his medical history, and a question, politely worded, almost gentle in its phrasing, about whether the HOA had conducted a decibel reading or merely estimated the sound level based on Garrett's personal observation. He sent the letter by certified mail at 4:45 p.m. Then he called Priscilla again and asked her to schedule a field crew for the following Thursday. 2 men, a total station and stakes. Survey of what? She asked. My road, he said. Garrett received the certified letter on Thursday. He read it in his kitchen, standing up, and felt a surge of irritation that he identified as having been provoked by the letter's tone. It was too calm, too organized, the kind of letter that had been written by someone who was not upset, which meant they were operating from a position they considered secure. He'd received enough insurance dispute letters to recognize the pattern. He called the HOA's attorney, a part-time arrangement with a man named Doug Ferris, who worked mostly in real estate, and handled the HOA's occasional disputes for a flat monthly retainer. We have standing, Doug told him. The ordinance is clear. He was operating above 65 decibels before 8 a.m. He's contesting whether we actually measured it. We don't need a measurement device. The ordinance doesn't require one. It's self-reporting enforcement. If it's audibly in excess, that's sufficient. He's going to fight it. Let him, Doug said. We've won 3 of these in the past 2 years. HOA covenants are enforceable. He agreed to them when he bought the property. Garrett hung up feeling better. He sent Desmond a formal response, unsigned, on HOA letterhead, informing him that the citation had been reviewed and upheld, and that failure to pay within 30 days would result in a lien against his property. The letter went out on Friday. On Monday, Desmond received it. He added it to the active dispute folder without reading it more than once. On Wednesday evening, he walked the full length of Breckenridge Lane with a flashlight and a measuring wheel, confirming dimensions he already knew from the plat. He photographed the road entrance, the row markers, the condition of the pavement, and the HOA's posted sign at the entrance, a tasteful green placard that read, "Welcome to Pinecrest Hollow, a planned community." He photographed the sign for a long time, then he walked home. On Thursday morning at 7:00 a.m. exactly, not 7:04, not 7:06, but 7:00 a.m. sharp, he placed a sawhorse at the entrance to Breckenridge Lane. On it he hung a laminated notice, printed on his firm's letterhead, which read, "Notice of Private Road Survey, BRECKNRIDG Lane. Pursuant to the rights of the fee simple owner of Lot 1, Pinecrest Hollow Subdivision, Book 44, page 112, Clearwater County. A formal boundary survey of the road corridor is hereby commenced. Vehicle access will be restricted during active survey operations. Estimated duration, 24 to 72 hours. Emergency vehicle access will be maintained at all times. All other vehicles must use alternate routing during this period. Alcott Boundary Solutions, LLC. Licensed Land Surveyors, State License 4471. He had mailed a copy of this notice, certified return receipt, to every property owner in Pinecrest Hollow, including Garrett Voss, 48 hours earlier. He set a second sawhorse 20 feet back, strung orange survey tape between them, and by 7:15 a.m., his two-man field crew had arrived and was setting up the total station. At 7:22 a.m., the first car appeared at the sawhorse, Marcus Finneran from Lot 12, in the Subaru, on his way to work. He rolled down his window and looked at the equipment. "What's going on?" "Survey work," Desmond said. He was wearing his orange vest and holding a field notebook. "Roads temporarily closed. Should be clear within 24 hours. Marcus stared at him. "I need to get to work." "There's alternate routing via Old Mill Road. Adds about 12 minutes. 12 minutes? Marcus looked at the sawhorse, then back at Desmond. "Can't you just let me through real quick?" "Not while equipment's in the road," Desmond said. "Liability issue." Marcus's jaw tightened. He reversed, turned around, and left. Garrett stepped out of the vehicle before it had fully stopped, leaving the engine running and the door open in the manner of a man who expected the world to pause for him. He was in a charcoal wool coat, dress shoes that were immediately inappropriate for the snow, and an expression that mixed genuine surprise with the early stages of a controlled fury. "Desmond," he said. He said the name the way some men say, "Now listen here. What is this?" "Survey operation," Desmond said. He didn't look up from his field notebook immediately. When he did, his expression was professional and unhurried. "I sent you notice 48 hours ago. Certified mail." "I got the notice. I thought it was a—" Garrett stopped. He'd thought it was a stunt. He'd said so to Renata over dinner, and she'd asked him to read it carefully, and he hadn't because he'd already decided what it was. "You can't close this road." "I'm not closing it. I'm temporarily restricting access during active survey operations. Emergency vehicles have full access. I've already coordinated with the county sheriff's dispatch and the fire station on Route 9. Garrett looked at the total station, at the two crew members moving with the practiced efficiency of people who did this every day, at the orange tape, at the laminated notice on the sawhorse. His mind was working, but it was working the way a man's mind works when he's trying to find the obvious flaw in something that doesn't have one. "On what authority?" he finally said. Desmond opened his field notebook to a flagged page and held it out. It was a copy of the recorded plat, Book 44, page 112, with Lot 1 and the road corridor highlighted in yellow. Fee simple ownership, Desmond said. The road's mine, has been since 2013. Garrett looked at the document. He did not take it. His eyes moved across the highlighted section, and Desmond watched the precise moment when Garrett understood, really understood, what he was looking at. The color in his face didn't drain so much as it redistributed, concentrating in a flush along his jaw. The HOA maintains this road, Garrett said. The HOA pays Ridgecrest Property Services to plow it, Desmond said. That's a service contract, not an ownership claim. The HOA has no recorded interest in this road. The lot owners have an easement for ingress and egress. I have everything else. Garrett's mouth opened and closed. This is harassment. You're doing this because of the citation. I'm doing this, Desmond said evenly, because I'm a licensed land surveyor and I have a professional and legal right to survey my own property. The timing is what it is. I'll call the county. Please do. I've already spoken with the county roads department. This is a private road. They have no jurisdiction. I'll call the police. I've already coordinated with the sheriff's office. They're aware of the survey and have confirmed I'm within my rights. Desmond paused. Deputy Holcomb was very helpful. You might know him. He's at Lot 22. Garrett stared at him. Behind him, 2 more cars had pulled up. The Acaffer family from Lot 8 and someone Desmond didn't recognize from one of the back lots. They were watching from their windshields with the cautious attention of people who sense that something larger is unfolding. Move the sawhorse, Garrett said. His voice had dropped. It was quiet and hard. No, Desmond said, same tone, same volume. The word landed between them, like something dropped on concrete. Garrett's jaw worked. He was not accustomed to clean, uncomplicated refusals. In his world, insurance sales, HOA politics, neighborhood governance, nearly everything was negotiable. Nearly every no was a not yet, and nearly every obstacle dissolved under the application of sufficient social pressure. He had a gift for making people feel that resistance was more trouble than compliance. It had served him well for 20 years. It was not serving him now. You're going to regret this, he said. I already regret the $250 fine, Desmond said. This is me doing something about it. Garrett got back in the Range Rover. He sat there for 40 seconds, Desmond counted, and then reversed and drove away. The cars behind him followed. The Acaffer's van made a 12-point turn. The unknown car simply backed all the way to the cul-de-sac. Desmond turned back to his crew. Let's get the North Monument established, he said. His crew chief, a quiet man named Tolley, glanced toward where Garrett's car had gone and then back at his equipment. That guy the HOA president? Yes. Tolley set his jaw level and looked through the eyepiece of the total station. All right, he said. Let's survey. By 10:00 a.m., Garrett had called Doug Ferris 3 times. Doug had called the county recorder's office, confirmed the plat, reviewed the easement language, and called Garrett back with a voice that had lost its earlier confidence. The easement is real, Doug said. His ownership of the road is real. The survey is legitimate professional activity. I can't find grounds to compel him to open the road. For how long can he keep it closed? The easement language doesn't specify. Courts generally apply a reasonableness standard to temporary restrictions by the underlying fee owner. 24 to 72 hours for a survey is going to be considered reasonable. And after 72 hours, if he hasn't finished, he'd need to either get consent from the easement holders or stop work and reopen. But Desmond, he's a professional surveyor. He knows exactly how long he needs to survey a 700-foot road corridor. He's not going to take longer than necessary. Doug paused. Unless he finds something that requires additional investigation. Garrett caught the implication. What could he find? Encroachments, improvements made within the road corridor without the underlying owner's consent. If any of the neighboring lots have driveways, retaining walls, fences, or landscaping that encroaches into that 42-foot corridor, and on a road that hasn't been formally surveyed in 30 years, there's a good chance some do. He has the standing to formally document them. And once they're documented, he can demand their removal. The silence on the line lasted 4 seconds. How many lots have driveways that connect to Breckenridge Lane? Garrett asked. All of them, Doug said quietly. By noon, Desmond had found 6 encroachments, 3 driveway aprons that extended past the lot line into the road corridor, 1 retaining wall from Lot 7, the Chen property, that encroached 14 inches, a decorative boulder at the entrance of Lot 19 that sat 11 inches inside the corridor, and the HOA's own welcome sign, the tasteful green placard, which was planted in a post hole sunk directly into the road corridor, on land that belonged to Desmond Alcott. He photographed each one. He measured each one. He logged them in his field notes with the GPS coordinates, the date, and the time. By 2:00 p.m., the residents of Pinecrest Hollow had begun gathering near the Sawhorse in ones and twos, talking in low voices, checking their watches. School pickup was at 3:30. 3 people had conference calls that required driving to spots with better cell coverage. One woman, Linda Barber from Lot 14, had a doctor's appointment in Havermill at 3:00 p.m. She approached Desmond directly and he liked her for it. "Mr. Alcott," she said, "I understand you're making a point. I'm not sure what Garrett did exactly, but I can guess it wasn't small. I just need to get to my cardiologist." Desmond looked at her for a moment. "Is it urgent?" "It's a follow-up, but I haven't missed one in 4 years." He nodded once. "I'll open the right lane, single-car passage, you can go." She exhaled, "Thank you." "Mrs. Barber," she paused, "when there's an HOA meeting called about this, and there will be one, I'd appreciate it if you'd show up." She studied him. "I'll be there," she said. He moved one Sawhorse 3 feet, stood at the edge, and waved her through. When the car had passed, he moved it back. At 4:45 p.m., with the survey 80% complete, Desmond's phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize, and he almost didn't answer. He answered. "This is Councilwoman Patricia Deakins," the voice said. "I represent District 4, which includes Clearwater County's unincorporated areas, including Pinecrest Hollow. I've received 11 calls today about a road closure on Breckenridge Lane." 11, Desmond said. "I would have expected more." "Mr. Alcott, I understand you own the road." "I do. What would it take to reopen it?" He'd thought about this carefully. He'd been thinking about it since that first cup of coffee on Tuesday morning, since the River Stone, since Claudette's voice on the phone. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he knew it was reasonable, which was the important part. Unreasonable men make demands. Reasonable men state terms. 3 things, Desmond said. The HOA rescinds Citation 2024 FEB 003 in writing and refunds any processing fees. The HOA formally acknowledges in a recorded amendment to the covenants that enforcement of noise ordinances requires objective measurement, not subjective assessment. And the HOA president issues a written apology, not to me personally, but to the community, acknowledging that the enforcement action was disproportionate and improperly initiated. Desmond looked at his field notebook. 6 encroachments documented and measured, 14 inches of retaining wall, 3 driveway aprons, 1 boulder, 1 sign. Any one of them could generate a formal legal demand. All 6 together could generate a lawsuit. "The encroachments are documented," he said. "I'll keep them on file. Whether I act on them depends on how this situation resolves." Another silence. When Deakins spoke again, her voice had shifted into the register of a person who respects a well-played hand. I'll make some calls tonight. The emergency HOA meeting was called for Saturday at 10:00 a.m. in the community room of the development's clubhouse. Desmond received a formal invitation, the first time he'd ever been formally invited to anything in Pinecrest Hollow. He attended in clean clothes and carried his field notebook. 31 of the 37 property owners came. The room was too small for the feeling inside it. Garrett sat at the front table with Doug Ferris and a carefully neutral expression that cost him visible effort. Desmond sat in the third row between Linda Barber and a man he'd never spoken to, a retired engineer from Lot 3 named Francis Tabb, who shook his hand firmly and said, "I always wondered who owned that road." Doug Ferris presented the HOA's legal position for 8 minutes. It was accurate, thorough, and did not make Garrett look good. Then Desmond was invited to speak. He stood up and spoke for 4 minutes. He did not raise his voice. He did not use inflammatory language. He presented the facts, the plat, the deed, the easement, the encroachments. He presented his 3 conditions. He said that the survey was complete, that the road could be reopened as soon as the conditions were met, and that he had no interest in prolonged conflict with his neighbors. "I've lived here 11 years," he said. "I've never asked for anything. I've never complained about anything. I used a snowblower on my own driveway at 7:04 in the morning, and I was fined $250. He let that sit in the air for a moment. "I want the fine rescinded. I want the process fixed so this doesn't happen to anyone else, and I want an acknowledgement that it was wrong. That's all." The room was very quiet. Francis Tabb raised his hand. "I move we accept Mr. Alcott's conditions." Linda Barber seconded it before the words were finished. The vote was 27 in favor, 0 opposed. Garrett abstained, which Doug Ferris later told him was legally meaningless but probably wise. Garrett read the written apology aloud at 11:45 a.m. He drafted it himself, which surprised Desmond slightly. He'd expected something lawyerly and minimal. Instead, it was 3 paragraphs, and while it did not read like a man who had been broken, it read like a man who had been genuinely stopped, who had run at full speed into something that simply did not move, and had taken the time in the 2 days since to sit with what that meant. "I acted on assumption rather than evidence," the apology read in part. "I treated enforcement as authority rather than responsibility. I did not consider the full consequences of my actions on a neighbor who had given me no reason for conflict. I was wrong." When he finished reading, he looked up. His eyes found Desmond's briefly, then moved away. Desmond did not feel triumph. He was honest enough with himself to notice this. What he felt was closer to exhaustion, and beneath it, something that might become, in time, a kind of peace. He went home and removed the sawhorses at 12:30 p.m. He coiled the survey tape. He confirmed with Tolley that the final field notes were complete and would be archived under the project number. He stood at the entrance to Breckenridge Lane for a moment and watched the first car come through, Marcus Finneran in the Subaru, moving slowly and carefully, watching Desmond as he passed. Desmond raised one hand. Marcus, after a beat, raised his. Inside, Desmond opened his journal and wrote the date and the time. He wrote about precision and patience and the difference between power and authority. He wrote about his father, who had taught him that records were protection, and that documentation was a form of love, love for future self, love for truth, love for the principle that things should be what they are recorded to be. He wrote about the welcome sign, still posted at the entrance to Pinecrest Hollow, still in his road corridor, which he had not demanded be moved. Not yet. He capped his pen and set the journal down. He walked to the window and looked out at Breckenridge Lane, clear now, the survey stake still marking its edges with small orange flags that caught the February light like the precise, patient punctuation of a sentence that wasn't finished, but had, for now, said enough. He opened the active dispute folder, removed citation 2024 FEB 003, and held it for a moment. Then he moved it to a folder he labeled Resolved. He put the river stone back in the bowl. He started the kettle. Outside, a car he didn't recognize was moving slowly down the lane, following a neighbor home, ordinary and unhurried, the way traffic moves on a road that everyone takes for granted, not knowing, as they passed Lot 1, that the man inside the white house at the end of the driveway was watching them, had always been watching them, and had only ever asked to be left in peace to clear his own snow and begin his own day at a time of his own choosing.